He came out on stage at Britain's Got Talent like a ghost, a man whose story was his identity, a story the crowd couldn't get. He was a ghost. He stood in his borrowed suit, a quiet monument to a life lived on the border of a dream. He was carrying a decade of being told he was not good enough. He couldn't see this weight. What was a routine Saturday night audition became the most dramatic and emotive moment of the season when he opened his mouth to sing a song by Prince. This metamorphosis took place in the space of 4 minutes. But the real story, that of the event that occurred long before the golden confetti was shed, is a much more complex, touching, and ultimately inspiring story than anything you could ever see on TV. This is due to the story happening in the past. This is the story of a guy who refused to be forgotten. And it's the story of his public failure, his private reinvention, and the calculated gamble that he took. What truly happened to Matty Juniosa is described in the above paragraph. On the 28th of March, in the year 2026, there was a Filipino singer of 27 years of age who was standing under the brilliant lights of the London Palladium and preparing to change the course of his life from that moment on. He was a blank canvas for the millions watching on the comforts of their own home. Simon Cowell, Amanda Holden, Alicia Dixon, and Bruno Tonioli saw only one person, a scared and optimistic hopeful with a karaoke standard and a well-rehearsed tale about a grandma who was helping out. This was the only guy they saw as a contender. They could not have known that they were looking at a man who had previously tasted the thrill of the ascension and the tragedy of the fall of a music career in the Philippines, who had buried one professional identity to invent another. They had no means of knowing this. They didn't see the waitress who had spent 2 years ferrying dishes between singing sessions in Glasgow. Nor did they see the strategist who had secretly picked the one song in the world he thought could shatter Simon Cowell's legendary defenses. Neither of these people was visible to them. Instead, they saw a singer. Before the first note left Matty's mouth, he gave the judges the actual deal on his condition. In his speech, he spoke about the years he would always be the loser in every competition he entered. In his comments, he sounded the resignation you'd expect from a man who's come to terms with his own apparent shortcomings. He made his resignation in a matter of sentences, and though it was a preamble they had heard 1,000 times before, the judges looked sweetly and sympathetically to the individual speaking. Right after that, the theater was filled with the instantly identifiable opening notes of Purple Rain, and the mood began to change. When the second verse was complete, there was a little ripple of movement in the front rows, and people were rising to their feet almost without their own choice. This happened almost shortly after the song was over. By the time he reached the song's glorious climax, the entire audience was on its feet, swept up in a common tide of joy. Simon Cowell was not waiting for it to start again the moment the song ended. That was when Matty slapped his hand down on the golden buzzer that was attached to the instrument. He was still holding the last note that was taking off. During the celebration, a cloud of gold confetti burst and showered across the stage. It was a celebration that felt both intimate and universal at the same time. Matty Juniosa, with his fists pressed to his head, seemed caught in the dazzling flood, as if he had no idea how to breathe. He acted as if he had lost how to breathe. The performance they had just witnessed was the end result of a strategy that had been in the works for almost a decade. But almost no one knew this fact, even though they had just experienced it. He was the first golden buzzer of the season, long before the confetti began to rain in London to mark the Olympics. A young child named Matty Juniosa saw that movement was the foundation of his identity. Throughout his life, he experienced a tapestry of varied environments. Where was he born and raised? He was born and raised in the busy metro of Quezon City, Philippines. Even before he started high school, his family was already a nomadic one, traveling to places such as Mandaluyong, Zamboanga, Tawi-Tawi, Cavite, and Taguig. They moved around quite a bit before he began high school. The constant uprooting brought about many changes in his life, particularly when he was in Tawi-Tawi, at the very southern tip of the archipelago. It was a faraway place from the cultural core of Manila, a place where a Catholic kid going to get an education in musical theater in Scotland could absorb a sense of home that was flexible and diversified, all at the same time. His formative years were spent steeped in the rich cultural fabric of his own nation, which created in him the ability to adapt to new conditions, which would prove to be his most significant attribute. He moved to new places, passed through different halls at school, yet his voice stayed the same throughout his life. This was one item that lasted all his life. By the time he was 5 years old, he was already singing and performing for anyone who would listen. He'd started doing this already. By the time he enrolled in the secondary school program at St. Paul College of Makati, he had already turned music from an interest into the defining characteristic of his identity. This metamorphosis happened while he was in the program. He also immersed himself into the merciless world of several local singing competitions and became part of the highly respected school chorus, Musica Paulinos. Friends who knew him at the time remember a young man who was always playing, always giving impromptu performances for students in the hallways, and always trying to perfect his craft. He pursued his study at De La Salle University of the Philippines after graduating from high school. That's where he got the opportunity to be in the most prestigious vocal performance group at the school. It was his debut performance for such a discerning crowd. 2018 was the year of his graduation, and he faced the same dilemma every young adult has to face. The option between a secure and predictable road and the terrible unpredictability of chasing a dream. He had to choose between the two. Matty decided he would go after the dream. He made his attempts once he had decided to pursue music with an effort that was unrelenting and all-consuming. Within a year, he had reached the audition stage of the first ever season of the Philippine edition of the singing competition, Idol. But there he was, suddenly, in front of the judges, his heart racing in his chest. And he was not just a young adult who liked to sing. He had become something far more meaningful. He was a creative person who was really close to realizing his goal of turning a lifelong passion into a genuine reality through the efforts that he had put out. What he didn't know was that this same ideal was about to be shattered in the most humiliating, public way possible. The Philippine version of the singing competition Idol had a first season in 2019, and it was a media event that was shown all across the country. The panel of judges for the competition was composed of some of the most well-known musicians in the country, such as the famous Regine Velasquez and the well-liked balladeer Moira de la Torre. The initial audition resulted in just 69 vocalists earning a golden ticket that allowed them to move forward to the next stage of the competition. This was out of a pool of thousands of applications from throughout the country. The gang included Matty, who was only 20 years old at the time and had just graduated from college. They belonged to the group. He walked into the competition with the unshakable notion that this was his moment, the culmination of everything he had been working for as he worked towards this moment. He had waited a long time for this moment. His persistence and determination helped him to clear the tough preliminary rounds and get a coveted place in the top 12 live concerts in the competition. The competition challenged the finalists to sing a song written by the renowned Filipino composer Ryan Cayabyab, who personally guided each of the contestants. The first live transmission would be the time this assignment was meant to be completed. The show's point system, a delicate check and balance, honored the votes of the public no less than the points handed out by the judges. It was evident from this that genius was not enough, and popularity was the most important factor. Matty, on the other hand, was not yet a well-known name, despite being a good vocalist. He didn't have a large fan base or a viral audition footage to drum up support. The product of the first elimination was made public, and the data that were revealed alarmed the general public. Matty was the lowest scoring finalist among the 12 finalists at the end of the competition. He had an overall score of 50.5%. That night, he and another participant were cut from the competition. He was the first to fall. While Zephany Dimaranan was packing his belongings, she was helpless to do anything except watch him. This was because she would go on to win the whole event. In an interview, Matty was honest and straightforward about his character being pulled from the game. He agreed that television might not have been a true reflection of his personality, but said he had no remorse over the way he was depicted. He spoke in a highly professional way, but the expression on his face said a whole other thing. His face looked like that of a young man who felt like his one and only shot to pursue a career in music had just been wasted in front of his entire country on live television. He would never have had the chance to pursue a career in music again. By a strange quirk of fate, the network that announced his elimination decided to give him a chance to save his life. It was an odd turn of events. Soon, the producers not only welcomed him back, but paired him with two other excellent finalists from his season. The finalists were Lucas Garcia, who finished second, and Enzo, who was also in the top 20. Both were knocked out of the competition. The all-male singing trio that they founded together was called Idols. They were the only members in the group. It was a second chance of the rarest sort for a performer who was still aching from the fact that they had been the first person to lose their life during the live events. This was a chance that was really unique. The ensemble soon became a regular fixture in Filipino variety shows and gradually built a small but loyal fan following. They achieved this reputation with their powerful harmonies and exciting shows. They were doing some actual job, true to life, at this time. In 2020, each of the three band members issued solo singles as part of a coordinated release, which was distributed by a prominent music firm in the Philippines. Matty's first official release as a recording artist was a passionate ballad, which he titled Sa'yo na Talaga. This song would be his first official release. It was a year when he was last in the public eye, and, as he said later, he saw his own name on a record, which was a life-changing moment for him. Last in the public ranking. For example, the Idols made their way to stardom with their guesting in popular TV shows such as It's Showtime and Your Face Sounds Familiar. That allowed them to keep on their way to success. The song was selected as the last lip-sync number for the finale of the second season of Drag Race Philippines, which is considered one of the biggest pop culture events in Southeast Asia. In 2021, their single, Kapangyarihan, was released, marking a surprising and unexpected peak in their career. This is an information that is almost totally unknown by the general public outside Philippines. Matty's voice was not only the music to the crowning moment of a continental LGBT landmark, but it was also the voice that scored the lowest in the finals of the Idol Philippines competition just 2 years ago. This was when Matty was competing for the Idol Philippines title. Ironically, it was a period of enormous vindication that circumstances made possible. Matty made a choice that would profoundly alter the direction of his life. He opted to walk away from the Idols franchise at the very height of its creative and commercial success. During the year 2022, the Idols made a public announcement that they were going to officially end their relationship. Despite the fact that the response was crystal apparent, a significant number of their followers were unable to comprehend it. Matty had been awarded a scholarship that would enable him to attend the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland, which is widely regarded as one of the most prominent educational institutions in Scotland. His goal was to earn a music theater Bachelor of Fine Arts degree. Due to the fact that he was leaving the Philippines in order to take it, he wasn't in the country. Until you take a step back, it appears as though the decision was made without any form of accountability being taken into consideration. He was ready to walk away from a music career that was going well, a deal with a major label, and a burgeoning national presence in a country where he was finally getting acknowledged. He was willing to walk away from all such opportunities. He was going to turn his back on everything that was going on. On the other hand, Matty was of the opinion that this was the only next move that made any sense to take after that. For a considerable amount of time, he had been plagued by the feeling that he was destined to be a singer who competed in competitions, and that he would be eternally cursed by the result of his early inability to achieve success in singing. He had been experiencing this sensation for a considerable amount of time. If you wanted to be more than just a voice, you had to disassemble everything and begin afresh from scratch. In order to silence the voices of criticism that were residing within your own mind, this was the only method available. When he arrived in Glasgow, he was carrying a mountain of costs as well as a scholarship that was only partially awarded. He was in a precarious financial situation. In order to make ends meet, he accepted a work as a waitress on the side, which was a great deal different from his existence as a recording artist in his hometown. If he wanted to make a living, he had to work. The days turned into a demanding marathon, consisting of combining shifts at a restaurant with a full schedule of acting classes, dance training, and vocal coaching at the conservatoire. This was just the beginning of the arduous marathon that was to come. He was a person who was constantly moving around and engaged in a variety of activities. After some time had passed, he would later remark that his first year spent in Scotland was both the most challenging and the most rewarding experience of his whole life. During his time there, he would make the following observations. Living with the continual cold, the strong Glaswegian dialect, and the peculiar food was challenging due to the fact that all of these things were new and unknown to the individual. On the other hand, he was struggling under the persistent and heavy burden of failure, which meant that he would have nothing of which to return. Another thing that tormented him was the fact that he was one of the few Filipinos in the program he was participating in. He had been living under the notion that failing meant having nothing to fall back on, and this was despite the fact that this was something that was true. In spite of this, he did not give up on the endeavor. In addition to putting his full attention into his studies, he tried out for every single role that was available in the theater. His study had him completely engrossed in its contents. When he received his diploma in 2024, he had already established himself as a well-known actor and had already done an incredible amount of work in the theater. In the past, he had been as a performer in critically acclaimed productions such as Kinky Boots and The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Moreover, he participated in the Fringe Theatre Festival that was held at the Edinburgh Festival. After that, he went straight back to working as a server, despite the fact that he had a degree of world-class caliber and that the grace period on his student visa was about to expire. With a degree, he accomplished this. In contrast to the golden confetti that was waiting for him, this was the unglamorous reality of a life spent working in the arts. The world was completely different from any other world. After graduating from the conservatory and submitting his audition film for Britain's Got Talent, Matty Juniosa had a significant transformation. This transformation occurred somewhere in the middle of his life. It seemed as though he had shifted his perspective from that of a hopeful participant to that of a tactician about the situation. It is quite evident to me that he did not make the decision to audition on a whim, but rather that it was an activity that he undertook with intentional and definite intent. He has provided evidence to back up his claim. Studying Simon Cowell took up a significant portion of his day. This was accomplished by him over the course of several decades, by watching videos of his work as a judge on television series such as American Idol and The X Factor. The judge was notorious for his nearly complete lack of visible emotion, and he was looking for a pattern, trying to find the specific aspects of the vocalization and the emotional delivery that would truly move the judge. He was seeking for a pattern. At some point over the course of his study, he discovered that Purple Rain by Prince was one of the songs that Simon had liked the most during his entire life. And the decision to proceed in this manner has been made. Unlike other singers, he did not just pick a song out of the air simply because he enjoyed it. He was a performer who had been humiliated in front of the public, who had spent years reconstructing himself in a distant country, and who had made the decision that if he was given one more opportunity to perform on a stage that was seen on television, he would not leave anything to chance. The song was chosen by him because he was a fan of it. His objective was to go after the person who owned the golden buzzer power, and he intended to accomplish this by employing his knowledge, abilities, and narrative as weapons in order to obtain the desired outcome. Following the broadcast of his audition on television, He carried out his plan with the utmost accuracy and precision throughout the entirety of the procedure. In the beginning of the song, he displayed a sensitive and almost broken sensitivity, which evoked the closeness that Prince had achieved in his first album. The song began with a significant amount of gentleness from him. As a result of his decision to refrain from speaking, he was able to successfully involve not only the audience, but also the judges in the story contained inside the song. After that, during the final brutal stretch, he pushed all of the energy and range of his voice into it, which caused it to sound absolutely stunning. In a short amount of time, the influence that was felt was profound. Halfway through the performance, the audience began to stand up and interact with the performers. Every single one of the 4 judges had come at this location as soon as the final note had been played. Simon Cowell, who hit the golden buzzer without being aware that it was tailor-made for him, was the recipient of the performance that was created specifically for him. The opening act of the season advanced to the live semi-finals without any interruptions after that. At that moment, the season had not yet been played for the first time. The piece ran for just 4 minutes, but its instant effect on the audience was far more than intended. The video of the audition went viral very quickly and spread through the online media to a far wider audience than only those in the UK and worldwide. The tale went public. The news networks in the Philippines ran with it, and he became a national hero. This happened within moments after the story was made public. 7 years ago, he was voted out of the competition by fans of the Philippine edition of American Idol. They posted their votes on social media and showed their support and disappointment for the choice on social media. Fans of the original idols started crafting movies where they linked his early performances with Lucas and Enzo to the moment when golden confetti began to rain in London. The films were taken at the same moment. It was the same man whose voice had punctuated one of the great cultural milestones of their lives, and they knew that the man playing on the British stage was that very man. This revelation was the reason why the millions of people who watched Drag Race Philippines started to bond with each other. The audition was shared on WhatsApp groups with such intensity and excitement that most of the viewers in the United Kingdom will never be able to understand it in a proper way. The infectious sickness traveled from the nursing facilities of Dubai to construction sites in Canada, and eventually to the whole Filipino diaspora around the world. Matty has vowed to perform in a new and interesting way as he gears up for the semifinals. The purpose of this performance is to prove that his audition was not merely an emotional moment, but the announcement of a multi-layered and powerful artist. The first golden buzzer artists are the ones that feel the weight of the expectations put on them when they perform, because of the immense pressure that is put on them during the season. On the contrary, if there is one thing that we can possibly take away from the narrative of Matty Juniosa, it is the awareness that pressure is a buddy that each and every one of us is familiar with. He has previously overcome the kinds of public failures that may do lasting damage to most careers. He is left without the essential substance of his ambition, everything of which has been taken away from him: the record contract, the band, and the country he was trying to build. They all left him. That is, every single one of them. He didn't mind starting from scratch. That was him. It was a long time coming, But the young boy from Quezon City who never stopped moving has now a reason to stop moving, at least for a stretch of time that the rest of the world can catch up to him. At this point, there is only one question to be addressed, and that is whether or not he is willing to go to any lengths to attain his purpose.